Hello, YouTube! I am Pinstar, and this is Airport CEO Strategy and Tactics, Episode 2. So, in our last episode, we got our little airfield established here. Got ourselves 6 little stalls and an assortment of various airplanes coming on in, going, and what have you. But we need to expand. We cannot sit on our laurels and do nothing else from here. So we gotta grow. We gotta grow, but we have to grow intelligently, both in a manner that does not upset the balance and flow of things in the immediate, but also planning for the future and allowing for future growth even beyond our humble beginnings here. So the first thing that we're going to want to do, now that we've accumulated over 20,000 buckaroonies, is to get ourselves another stand. But before that, we have to consider where we want to place it. Now, the logical looking placement here would be, probably here or here, and then just extend out this little runway here, or this taxiway out a little bit, hook it up, and be done with it, right? No, because when you are basically loading up a offshoot like this, the more and more stands you put on a single taxiway, the more and more overloaded that taxiway is going to become, and the more and more frequent traffic jams are going to be happening. I would say even now, with the 6 of these, this is pushing it a little bit. 5 might be the ideal on an offshoot, but I like me some symmetry, so we're going 6. But I would not dare go to 7 and beyond on this little offshoot. We're going to want to do another little offshoot. Now, that being said, we, rather than just sticking it off some random thing, we also want to plan ahead for future construction. I have something that I want to build right here-ish for later in a later episode when we transition. So that being said, let us get our handy-dandy measuring concrete tool here. I'm sure the dev will be providing a proper planning tool in times to come, but for the time being, this is our tool of choice when measuring. And instead of sticking it up here in the front, I'm actually going to go ahead and put it like here. Sort of, along this line up here. With the road facing down. That's very specific that I'm going to be doing it that way. Also, by the way, this is a new patch from last episode. This is 0.22.2, and I can already see one thing. When you delete out your planning, it kills the grass. The grass grows back. It doesn't do anything good or bad to your gameplay. It's just a nice little effect. But we are going to put this up by 2, and actually, no, we want to put this up by 5. We want this to have the same kind of lead as these guys down here. And again, more on the reasons for that later. But again, this goes into the whole idea of planning ahead. So we're going to go ahead and bring this down here. And once again, because we want to favor the offshoots being able to get the planes out from here and out here, we're going to put the runway holding point on the main line here. So if this plane is trying to exit here, any outgoing traffic here will stop and wait for them to leave before continuing on. Now, why am I doing that way? Why aren't I not making these wait? Well, here's the reason. So let's say we have a plane, coming up here and it stops waiting for this one, and maybe a couple more planes come behind it. Well, they'll just wait their turn in line on this nice open straightaway. That still allows this whole complex to empty itself out and get new planes coming in, so it doesn't cause any real bottlenecks or any problems. Whereas if we were to, put the bottleneck here and make this place wait for everyone else, this would be much more prone to bottlenecking. Again, because we've got a few too many, well, I've probably got one too many stands on here, but like I said, 6 is pushing it. So we want the 6 to have the right of way. Now then, before we go ahead and call out our next contractor, I think it is time we upgrade our contractor. If we take a look at our construction here, highway is always going to be the default contractor that you get in the beginning, but they suck. Their prices suck. They have few workers. It's just not a good deal all around. You don't have much of a choice in the beginning of the game, but once you build up, you will notice, if we go here to contracts, that we have our next contractor offering a contract for us, Brickley. Now looking here, Brickley not only gives us a max of 80 people, but their hourly fee is only 6.6 compared to the $9 that Highway is charging us. So it is time to ditch Highway. Now it says contract not completed, cancellation fees apply. I don't see anywhere in here about a cancellation fee, nor do you get charged a cancellation fee when ditching the contractor here. So I honestly am not sure where it's coming from on there. But that being said, well, now Brickley has gone a little crazy with the contract spawns, but we will sign ourselves some Brickley, and now we have a new, much better contractor. Now, mind you, the contractor does not impact the prices for on-spot repairs, so fixing this up is going to cost the same regardless. So, that being said, let's get our stand built. The day is young. You can start making use of it. We don't need all 80 people at the moment, but we do need 35. As far as the speed and efficiency of the contractors, they're, as far as I can tell, identical. They send the same people out. They move just as quickly. They build just as quickly. There's no difference in the level of quality. Just a matter of the available quantity, and also troll box. And we got our one leftover contractor to pick up that troll box. Off you go, man. Thank you. And off you guys go. You always just want to think economics when it comes to the different contractors and pick the one that is the least expensive. Having the extra contractors available is always a bonus, but it pales in comparison to finding a contractor that has fewer, it costs less per hour. All right, we're going to go ahead and crank up the speed here, let our planes do their thing. At the moment, we are, to pardon the phrase, in a holding pattern. We're waiting on our cash flow to come in and waiting for our so that we can build more stands to further increase our cash flow. Now, we can only really do that up to a certain point, because just as this particular taxiway can become overloaded if we stack too many stands on it, this particular runway will become overloaded once we've built up enough total stands and enough coming and going traffic. At the moment, it's handling things just fine. If there's ever a backup, it's no more than 1 or 2 deep. It's nothing that's going to cause problems or bottlenecks or really anything. So we can stack on more, but we can't do that forever. It will come to a point where this one runway cannot handle the load that we are going to be sending its way. But that's fine. You just build as much as you can with what you got, and then you plan for upgrades in the future. And I'll be showing you some of the more effective ways to expand your total runway capacity once you've overloaded your initial runway here. Looks like we got 2 late leavers, so we should get 2 last-minute joiners because... I think this is a bug. Our reputation with general aviation was much higher, but it reset to 50 when I loaded the save game. I don't know why it does that, but it'll climb itself back up. But as long as they like us, we will generally get full parking here. Now, granted, having all of our stands full overnight is not that important to us as a more traditionally priced airport because we've made parking so cheap. Now, yes, one particular tactic one might be tempted to employ is to fire up the economics panel here and just overnight crank up the parking price and lower the light landing fee and then switching it back in morning. That's a bit gamey. That's a bit gamey for my taste. So we are going to be avoiding doing that kind of malarkey. But if you don't mind a little gaminess, that is certainly something you could pursue. Now, there's one other thing that I want to teach you guys how to do. And so for the moment here, we've built our runway with a particularly desired direction of taking off and landing in mind. We want our planes to take off and land in a north to south direction. That is ideal. And we've kind of conditioned the pilots to do that route because my reasoning for sticking all of these down here right at the end tip of the runway is, by nature, the pilots will want to take the shortest but still valid route available. So what is shorter for a pilot? To land south to north and then taxi all the way down here, or to land north to south and then have a real short taxi? Well, of course they're going to want to do north to south and have the short taxi. Now, because the incoming pilots are already doing that, the outgoing pilots kind of get the memo that, okay, we're going to take the long road and come all the way up here so that we can leave. So without any outside interference, that is the pattern that our planes are going to be taking here. That being said, there is one form of outside interference that will cause your carefully mapped planes to, well, go slightly different directions than you would ideally want them for. And when I first saw this in action, I thought it was a bug. But then after observing it and correlating it with the weather, I realized that, well, if you ever see your planes suddenly decide to start taking off and landing at a different direction on your runway here, that's not a bug. That is actually intended behavior. And this actually mirrors real life here. When a plane when a plane in real life is taking off and landing, the ideal direction for the wind is to be a headwind, meaning the plane wants to be flying into the wind. So if a plane is landing north to south, they want the wind blowing south to north. That aids in slowing the plane down for a landing, but it also gives them additional lift when taking off against the wind. So it's a win-win situation for either form of takeoff or landing. Likewise, the opposite is also true. If the wind is a tailwind, that is not ideal for takeoffs or landings. Now, that doesn't become a problem most of the time, but whenever the wind shifts to the unideal direction and it happens to be strong enough to actually impact the way that the pilots decide to take off or land, that's when you're going to start seeing planes choosing opposite directions on the runway. Now, at our current setup, that would be horrifically inefficient. But what we can do, and because you obviously can't control the weather, what you can do is you can mitigate the effects of these wind switches through a technique what I like to call wind proofing. So what we're going to do here is we're going to pretend, even though this might not happen for a while, because the weather is nice and random like that, we're going to pretend like the runway has just switched. So we got a really nasty north to south wind. The planes don't want to land north to south anymore. They want to land south to north now. So how are we going to deal with that? Well, we need to flip this little arm on its side here. So this little offshoot right here is great for north to south landings, useless for the other direction. So what we want is to count 5 pips. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And have a little offshoot in this direction. And give them a little off ramp right here. And again, pretending like this is the way to go. And also, just to mirror it on this side, we want to put a holding point on here, because in a flipped situation, they're going to be taking off from this side. So they're going to come onto here. So we want them to hold right here, and then they can take off. So now our runway, yes, it's going to be a little bit less efficient when it comes to taxiing to their final destination. But now our runway can handle it either direction. So things work out pretty nicely in that regard, should we get a wind switch. Oh, one other thing we want to do here to help us predict the weather is to get ourselves a little weather station. Once again, no control over the weather, but this will give us a little bit of an insight into the weather, into what's going on and how the system is going to be, what's coming down the pipeline. So I'm going to go ahead and build that. It's 5,000. Yes, it delays our next thing, but we'll be getting that soon enough. What I'll do is I'll build up our cache here, and then have when I build our next stand, we'll go ahead and get the contractors involved and get everything built in one go, and then I'll take a run through the best way to read the wind here. All right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and fast forward here while we wait for our cash monies to come in. Actually, I might as well repair this as well. Actually, before we end here, before we fast forward here, one of the other reasons why the ideal direction for this and the way I'm setting this up is by having the departure direction up here. Look how much room we have for things to stack up. See how there's a little bit of a traffic jam right here? There's always going to be a traffic jam of general aviation in the morning. That's because everyone who was previously parked in your stands wants to leave. And then a new influx of people want to come in at the same time. So they kind of have to alternate. You get one guy leaves, then one new guy comes in. And then the next guy leaves, and then another guy comes in. So it takes them a while to sort of digest the outgoing planes here. So you're going to get a little backup, even if you've not completely overloaded the runway here. But that being said, by giving them ample backup room here, you can sort of weather that backup there without sort of killing your traffic flow here. So actually it looks like we're probably not going to need to fast forward here, because I've been yapping efficiently, or inefficiently, depending on how you want to see it. So that being said, we've got ourselves, actually let's map out the taxiway first. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, boom. And then we'll get our grass stand. And again, we want these taxiways bumped up to each other back to back. All right, let's get our contractors on the scene here. Let's see, 23. So this will be closer to, I believe, 28 would be the ideal number. It's less critical now because each contractor is cheaper, individually speaking, that is. Troll bucks. And, I overshot a little bit. Whoops. That's okay. We will send the rest of you guys home. All right, so we've got our little weather vane here. Plus we've got this. Let's get this functional before we go taking a look at the weather so that we can get more guys coming in here. All right, so the weather, once you build this little $5,000 weather station here, that allows you to open up the weather panel here. And this tells you not only what the weather is right now, but what it'll probably be in the near future. So right now we've got, the temperature I don't really think has much of a degree. At the moment, weather's going to have a lot bigger impact on the game as time goes on. But for the moment, the only thing that I've seen the weather really have an impact on is wind direction with takeoffs, and also occasionally delaying incoming flights if the weather's nasty. But now let's take a look at it here. So, I'm going to pop up a chart here for a second. The degrees that you see right here, see how the wind is currently 6 degrees? If you look at the chart, you can see that a 6-degree wind is actually blowing north to south, the unideal wind direction. However, it's only blowing at 5 knots. That's really, really slow and gentle. So the planes are probably not really caring about the wind when it comes to what direction it's blowing. And as we can see here, the later today is going to be pretty calm. Now, the wind looks like it might be picking up a little bit later on. Of course, the accuracy of the weather forecast here may vary. So what you see over here may not be what actually ends up happening. But here, the wind is blowing minimally, so our planes will be choosing the more optimal route, regardless of what direction it's going. And now it's blowing perfectly north to south. But again, 10 knots, that's nothing. That's bupkis. That is a gentle breeze. So we don't have too much to worry about here. All right, we are almost up to our next stand. See how quickly this flows once we get the traffic going? We are going to put another stand up here. Like so. Yep. See how this guy stopped to wait for the guys to get out, and then they went ahead and went in. That works out quite nicely for us, and keeps the traffic flowing quite evenly. Let's get Brickley on the horn. I think 10 will do it for us. Will we? Yeah, no, we probably won't have it built in time for it to be used in the evening. Because once it gets late enough, even if there's a free stand, you're not going to get incoming general aviation. But that's okay. That's not the end of the world. It does not cost a lot of money to operate these small stands anyway. And you know what? I've seen people arrive after after 1900 and such. So, it might happen. It might not. It's not ultimately not that important. All right, and as you can see, even after just 1 day's worth of use, our runway is getting beaten and battered to heck, and that's a good thing. When your runway is getting routinely mauled by the plane traffic, that means it's being used efficiently. There are a lot of takeoffs and a lot of landings that are generating us a lot of money. So the fact that we have another $3,000+ repair bill at the end of the evening, that's fine. That's what we want. That means things are doing well. If we had it at the end of the day where the runway was in near pristine condition, that would be worrying, because that means that we didn't have a lot of planes coming and going, and we want them to come and go as frequently as possible. So we're going to go ahead and fast forward here. I do wish it would allow you to set the time you could fast forward to, but I could understand it's a performance thing. And once we get later on in the game, the speed and goings-ons at starting around 4 a.m., it becomes understandable that things get a little hectic even that early in the morning. But for the moment, yeah, nothing's going to go on because even if these guys wanted to leave, they wouldn't until 5 a.m. And I can tell you, nobody really is in a race to leave right in the at 5 a.m. They usually start trickling out around 6 a.m., which is fine. General aviation's gonna do what a general aviation's got to do. And then they all leave at the same time. Yeah, this guy's trying to beat the traffic. All right, now because he was already on his way across the line, that's why he didn't stop. And these guys, looks like it looks like it's a traffic flow thing here. But once again, once the incoming traffic comes up here, they're able to get in, even though we have this nice big backup of planes. Now, also, as you can see, now that we've built up the number of gates here, we're kind of reaching the end of our one runway capacity. I'm going to build one more of these, just to get in place so we can have a good baseline of revenue before we change gears and start increasing our revenues through a slightly different avenue. Because just adding more and more and more and more stands to this one runway is soon going to cause our traffic to choke ourselves to death. We don't want that. So we're going to be transitioning in a little bit. One other topic I wanted to touch on briefly while we wait for our money to accumulate is that of loans. Now, loans and I have a little bit of there's some games, some past games that I played where I live and die by loans. Big Pharma, for example, is a game where I aggressively go after loans, take as many as I can, and just flip that into more and more profits. Here, because of the nature of the game and because of, the pacing of it, and where you have these sort of enforced dead periods where planes can't take off and land, but the loan keeps ticking away, going for a loan is not necessarily the best idea. Also, the problem I have with a lot of these is these payment plans. You borrow $450 and you start paying it back over the course of only 4 days. That's kind of crazy. That's difficult to turn this money into pure profits that quickly enough to offset the hourly cost that taking this loan incurs. And if you can't offset the hourly cost, you're better off just waiting for your funds to naturally accumulate, because then you're not paying all that money in interest. I'm not saying don't ever take a loan, because there are some conditions in which the loan fairy decides to bless you with perfect numbers. The perfectly sized loan with a low interest rate and, most importantly, a larger number of days for repayment. If you can get something that's like 6 or 7 days to repay, you're golden. That loan is going to probably pay for itself. But even then, it's not a guarantee unless you know what you want to do with it. Do not ever take a loan unless you have basically all of the money that you're about to borrow spoken for in what you're going to use it. If you know what projects you're going to make use of, then yeah, go ahead if the numbers crunch out right. But if they don't, you might just want to sit back and wait until some form of inspiration dawns on you about what you want to do next. Now, granted, I already do have a really concrete idea of exactly what we want to do next, but again, I'm not liking the numbers that I'm seeing from those loans there, so I'm gonna wait. What I'll probably do is in between now and the next episode, I will just let some time pass. Just let our setup cook as is. Let the planes come, let the planes go, let us tick up some money here. And once we've accumulated enough funds to enter our next phase, we will launch that plan into action. So if you guys like this episode and you want to see more like it, go ahead and hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and leave me a comment, good, bad, or indifferent. Your feedback's always welcome. So until next time, this has been Pinstar signing out. See ya.